Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. We're going to be talking today about the concept of eating less and moving more for weight loss. Now, there's a big debate all the time in the fitness space about how it's much more complicated than just simply moving more throughout the day, right? And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's just a simple math equation, right? It's calories in, calories out. Now, how we get to that end goal can be a bit challenging, right? There is a little bit of nuance there, but simply put, if you have more calories going out, you're burning more calories than you are consuming, then you will lose weight. And so the question is not whether or not that is true, because we know that it is. The question is, how do we get there, right? Because there's a lot of people who work out regularly. There's a lot of people who eat very well, and they still have a hard time losing weight. And typically it comes down to a couple things. One, they're not moving nearly as much as they think they are. Two, they're not eating quite as well as they think they are, and they're eating more calories than they initially thought. Or three, they're simply just not aware of what's actually going on, right? So they all kind of go hand in hand there. They all are ultimately leading to the same thing, not losing weight. And so, for most people, I would say if you can combine exercise and a calorie deficit, that's going to be your best bet, right? Now, for a lot of people, cutting calories. So if your calorie goal is already pretty low, going even lower on calories is not a great solution, right? Because you're not going to have fuel to do other things. And when your calories are low, your sleep's going to be messed up. If your kids already aren't sleeping very well and your sleep is messed up, it's going to make it even worse, right? So cutting your calories even lower is going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your energy levels. It's going to affect your workouts. It's going to affect your focus levels throughout the day. And so we need that fuel, right? Calories are fuel, right? They're energy. And so the more calories we can have, the more calories we have in our body, the more energy we're going to have, which is great, right? We want that energy, right? What causes fat gain, what causes it very difficult to lose weight is when we have an excess of calories, right? When we have too many calories and we're not able to burn it off. And so if you're increasing your calories, but you're not increasing your output, you're not increasing your energy output, you're not increasing your exercise, then we're not going to be able to lose weight, right? And so you can work out 3 times a week, you can strength train all you want, but if we're not controlling the other part of the equation, we're not controlling how many calories are coming in, then we're not going to be able to get you to your goal, right? You're not going to be able to lose weight. And so how can we address this, right? And so typically when we look at fat loss, we want to think of nutrition as the driver of fat loss. Strength training is going to build muscle. Cardio is going to be for your health, right? But there comes a point where we have to look at all aspects, right? And so if you're already in a calorie deficit, so let's say you're a 250-pound guy and you're eating at 1900 calories, right? For a long time, that's going to work very well for you, right? You're going to be losing weight very steadily, especially if you combine that with daily walks, right? The more movement we have, we're going to be burning some extra calories. Now, after a while, this process is going to slow down. That's completely normal, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to lower the calories, because there are a variety of reasons why your body is going to hang on to weight. Could be water, could be stress, could be lots of different things as to why your body is going to hang on to it. And if you stay the course, if you stay consistent and you're tracking accurately, that weight is going to eventually start to catch up. Now, there comes a point though where you will stall. That's inevitable. Now, if you're tracking everything accurately, you're working out, you're getting your steps, you're doing all these things, you're still not losing weight, then we have to look at some other things here. What can we increase, right? And I am on the side now. This may go against what a lot of coaches look at, but I like to increase my activity then, right? If I'm already been in a calorie deficit for a long time, you're probably getting really tired of it, right? If I've already been cutting calories, I don't want to cut anymore, right? Being in a calorie deficit is already not a lot of fun. Doesn't have to be miserable, but it's not something you're excited about, right? If anytime we can eat more food, that's something we're going to want to do. And so how can we help tip the scale, pun intended there, how can we tip the scales here to go in our favor? And so we can increase our output, right? So if right now you're at 5,000 steps a day, going to 10,000 steps a day could make a big difference, right? Without even taking away any more calories, right? Then because there's a certain point here, I'm not going to go below. I know when I'm trying to, I go through phases where, I'm trying to build muscle. I'll go to maintenance. Maybe I'm trying to cut a little bit here and there. And there's a number that I don't like to go below because it's already hard enough to hit that number consistently. So if I go even lower, I know I'm going to be irritable. I know I'm not going to feel very good. I know my workouts are going to suffer. I know I'm going to probably take it out on my wife and kids because I'm not in a great mood. I'm not sleeping. And one thing that this is kind of a sidebar here, but one thing you may notice too when you are cutting calories for an extended period of time, you get really cold too. My fingers get really cold. It makes sleep difficult, right? I start sleeping with socks on, which is strange for me. And so your body is going to change when you're not getting the fuel that you're used to. There are lots of things change. And so back to our original discussion here, but there's a point that I do not like to go below, and I will never do a 1,200 calorie diet. I have tried tons of different things in the past. Anything you can think of, I have probably tried before. One, I tried when I was younger because I was naive and I did not realize what did and did not work, what was and what was not sustainable. And two, I like to try different things for my clients, right? Because a lot of times clients will ask, what do you think about keto? What do you think about paleo? What do you think about a juice cleanse, right? I have tried all those things. Do not try a juice cleanse. It is an expensive way to sit in the bathroom all day long, right? You will lose weight. You're going to gain it right back as soon as you go back to your normal routine because you just have no food coming in, right? You have no food. You're on the toilet all day because you're drinking some special teas and all these things, and it doesn't feel good. So please just take my advice. A lot of times we have to learn lessons from other people because a lot of times most people like to learn from their own mistakes, right? They have trouble learning from other people. But I encourage you to take my advice on this one. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your money on a juice cleanse, on special teas or anything. It's not worth it. Your stomach's going to be a wreck. Not a lot of fun. But when we are trying to cut calories, right? If you are eating 1,900 calories a day and weight loss maybe is going very slow, it's kind of stalled for a while, you could decrease calories, right? You could decrease calories. That will work. If everything else stays the same, you're working out 3 times a week, you're hitting 7,000 steps a day, and your calories are 1,900. If you decrease your calories to 1,700, yes, that will work. But if you also, instead of just working out 3 times a week and getting an average of 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day, if you all of a sudden increased your steps to 10,000 to 12,000 steps a day, kept the calories the same, that will also work. Right? There are other things you can do instead of keep cutting your calories lower. And it's kind of like a buzz phrase now of using exercise to burn calories. And although coaches maybe don't like to admit it, it is a great way to help speed up fat loss, right? You can lose all the weight you want to just by having your nutrition in check, right? If you can eat in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. But how can we make it faster? By walking more, by doing more cardio workouts, by doing more strength training. And why does it work? Because you're burning calories, right? Now, we don't want that to be our only method of cutting calories. We don't want to just go running, spend hours on the treadmill. You're not going to be very happy with those results because Strength training is where our body composition improvements are going to occur, right? People who you see on maybe some of these like high intensity workout videos and stuff, chances are they didn't get the body that they are showing you in those videos from those workouts, but it doesn't mean that they don't do those workouts occasionally, right? Think of a guy like Sean T. Sean T does like T25, Insanity, things like that. The guy is very strong, very muscular. There's a good chance he does some form of high intensity training. He does cardio and things like that, but he didn't build that muscle from doing those, right? He does some form of strength training too, right? Think of like CrossFit athletes. Like CrossFit athletes do very high intensity exercise. They do a lot of strength training, but they also are very dedicated, right? I don't do CrossFit myself. When I was in college, I actually worked in a gym. It was part physical therapy, part CrossFit. I worked the desk in the gym. And so I got to see a lot of CrossFit athletes. They're very dedicated. Some on Saturdays, I think we'd be open from like eight to noon or something. There were people there who were literally there the entire time I was working. They were there all morning long. They were there before I got there, and they were there until I left. Right? They would spend they're extremely dedicated, and so. But how did they get stronger? The same principles, right? Time under tension, progressive overload. They're getting stronger on these key lifts, right? And so over time, they're building muscle. But you don't have 4 hours to spend on a workout on a Saturday, right? You want to go play with your kids and stuff. And so it's not saying CrossFit isn't going to work. It's not saying high intensity workouts, things like that aren't going to get you in shape, right? But we need some element of strength training, right? And for people who are absolute beginners, people who don't work out regularly, people who haven't regularly worked out in the past, once they start doing some of those workouts, they're going to build muscle because they're getting stronger, right? But it's not necessarily the most efficient way to get stronger. But I'm under the assumption that all movement is movement, and it all counts for something, right? So just because you do something that isn't quote unquote the best way to do it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? If you like doing Insanity, if you like doing T25, if you like doing high intensity interval training, and it's going to keep you motivated, you're going to stay with it, then do that. Then do that. Is that the most efficient way to get to where you want to go? Probably not. Probably not. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? I love playing basketball. Is that the best way for me to get cardio in? No. Would I improve my cardio at a faster rate if I was running wind sprints, if I was running the stairs, if I was, being more intentional with it? Sure. But am I going to stay with that if I don't enjoy it? No. If you like to play tennis, is that a good way to get cardio in? Maybe. If you're going to play tennis 3 times a week, that's going to be more cardio than if you're going to run once a month, right? And so a lot of times we look at things as what's optimal, right? Is it optimal to increase your cardio to burn more calories so you can eat a little more? Probably not. But if you're able to stick with that, if moving more, if running more, if riding your bike more, if doing these things more, if exercising a little bit more, staying 10 minutes longer at the gym is going to help you tip that scale a little bit so you can burn a little bit more calories while your calories are still in check, right? And it's going to help you reach your goal faster, then do that, right? Because cutting your calories really low isn't a great long-term approach, right? Fat loss is a terrible long-term approach, but the thing that not a lot of people talk about is that most people will continue to go through cycles their entire life of trying to lose weight. They will lose weight, gain it back, lose weight, gain it back. Even a lot of these approaches where we're talking about what's more sustainable, right? How can we get to our goal as sustainably as possible? And I am all for that. If you've been following the podcast for a while, if you're following my content, if you've been following me on any social media platform, I always preach sustainability. But it doesn't mean there aren't periods in your life where you can put the pedal to the metal a little bit. You can pick up the pace a little bit. You can sprint a little bit, right? If you're a long distance runner, you don't sprint out the gate. But at the end, once you see the finish line, you may sprint. You may start a little quicker and slow down. You have different periods of the race where you're going a little quicker than others, right? And you have periods of the race you may have to stop, grab a snack, get some water, right? There are tons of different approaches to get there. And when we preach sustainability, it doesn't mean you're going to do 3 workouts a week, 10,000 steps a day for 16 weeks. You're going to reach your goal and then you're going to maintain that for the rest of your life. No, because there are going to be times where you go on vacation, you're going to put on a little bit of weight. You're going to have a busy period at work, you're going to put on a little bit of weight. But if we can get to a point, maybe 5, 10 pounds of your goal weight and maintain that forever, ideally, that's where we want to be. But most people never get there, and most people will never get there because they look at everything they find online and they think they have to apply everything. They think everything they read applies to them, and that's just not true. That's just not true, right? If you have a 3 month stretch where maybe your kids are in school, work is real slow for you right now, and you can go to the gym twice as much as you normally do that. Just because you can only work out twice a week during a normal week doesn't mean you can't go 4 times a week when you're able to, right? Sustainability is important, right? We want to find something you can stick to, but just like building a business, right? If you have more time to put into your work, you're not going to be like, well, you know what? In January of this year, I'm not able to put this much time in, so I'm not going to do it now. No, that's not how it works, right? And that's how you never get ahead, right? And so if you can put a little bit more in now, if you have time to go walk every morning and get 15,000 steps in each day, do that right now, right? And then scale it back a little bit. We always talk about a lot of coaches I know talk all the time about looking at fitness as a dial instead of an on and off switch, right? But they kind of preach where the dial doesn't actually move. We set it at one pace and we never move it. That's not how it works, right? You can ramp it up. Just because you sometimes have to scale it back doesn't mean you can't ramp it up too. If you have the time to ramp it up a little bit, go for it, right? And so instead of just looking at your calories, how can I cut more calories? How can I cut more calories? Look at the other end of the equation too. Can I increase my movement? Can I increase the intensity of my workouts? Could I add an extra set? Could I add maybe an extra exercise? I'm only at the gym for 45 minutes, but I have an hour and 15 minutes. Could you add a little bit of cardio at the end of the workout, right? And doing that for a week isn't going to do much for you, but doing that for a month is going to make progress. Doing that for a year is going to make a lot of progress, right? And so you don't always just have to cut calories, right? Calories in, calories out works. But how we get to the end goal, there's lots of different ways to get there. That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.